Warning: this stream is for entertainment purposes. The opinions expressed by the participants might be exaggerated for comedic effect. Harsh language can be used. Thought-provoking or controversial topics may be discussed.
Hello, and welcome to Terror of Your Skin. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Good to be back.
Yeah. Thank you, Crispy, for joining me for this conversation. I want to talk about pacing because I feel like that's some place, sometime that maybe we can work on in our game. And the big question that I had is like, how can we, like, whose job is it to control pacing? Is it only on the GM? Is it part the GM, part the player? Should be left mostly to the player? And do we need to always yield to the faster pace? So this is the kind of topic I want to address tonight.
Sounds good. Yep. Sounds good. This is a great topic. For a long time, even before I had my own personal epiphany as to what I need from the hobby and what I think will improve the hobby most, I still would start game sessions with a sticky note on my Dungeon Master screen, and it just said pacing. That's all it said. So this is something that, as I watch a lot of games for this new series I'm doing, it comes up a lot. Like what's too slow, what's too rushed, what should the pacing be? How do you decide the pacing? As you say, what pressures yield to a slower pace versus a high pace? Yeah. So, and I have thoughts. So I'm sure you do too. It'll be a good conversation. And we've already got some people commenting too, which is fantastic.
Yes. I'll come back to those a little later when they get relevant to because I think it's gonna be interesting. But I can say I to Arun and I to Maya Trumpet has been struck by lightning.
Yes.
Which and other people that are watching, but those two manifested themselves in chat.
They're brave.
We can talk about like what you've been doing, right? Because like you've been doing those unsalted gaming advice, and I've been watching those. I really like them. I really like when you do them live. I keep telling you that.
I know. Yeah. It's a funny thing, and I don't know the inner workings of YouTube, but the live unsolicited advice videos are great because I can interact with the chat, but they don't even get a tenth of the reach of a recorded video for some reason. So there seems to be something, I don't know what's going on, but my last one I recorded and then just uploaded as a recorded video. And it could be also that I was going after everyone's favorite D&D dad, and I wasn't really going after him. I was just looking at a game he had that I thought could be improved. And it's been, I would say, pretty well received. A lot of people watched it. A lot of people hate it. A roughly equal number like it. So that I'm good with that. That's all good. But yeah.
I think it's very entertaining content. And I like the way you're doing it because you're not just like, you can laugh at those things, right? You can
Sure.
point and laugh at it, but you also like provide something like constructive about it.
I'm trying to be Max. Yeah, I'm trying. It's not just me dogpiling on someone, and I'm not trying to just rag on them, or I am trying to say, well, look, if you change this, then this would be better, and this is why. My hope is that someone watching will hear something I said, maybe one or two things that I mentioned. These are generally longer format videos. But maybe something will kind of, oh yeah, that maybe I'll try that next game. And I'm convinced that if people start thinking about their games a little more and trying a few concrete things that'll help role play exist in the game, they'll have a better experience overall. They'll still have fun too. It's not that I'm a anti-fun guy. I just like a serious hobby. I'm more like you, Max. I want the serious side of the hobby to be represented, not just the casual kind of touristy side. I'm happy they're here. I'm not one that's going to say, well, I don't want these people. Max may disagree with me on this. I don't care that they're playing their version of the game. I just want to say, hey, there's this other side that you may want to consider if you're here for the long run, or if this is really speaking to you at some level. Role playing as a hobby speaks to you, so you want to be. You want to give it more thought. You want to be more involved. Here's some things you could do to be in character, to actually emphasize the key component of the hobby, which is role play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't
And
disagree
yes,
with
I
you
did almost
that,
have a breakdown
on that at
watching
all.
some
Yeah.
of these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did
I
almost.
don't
It
I
was
don't
hard.
disagree with you at all on that, because like I often say, right, like I don't care how you play your game at home, but like
No,
the
doesn't bother
content I
me.
do is for
Mhm.
people that, maybe you're dissatisfied, like you don't have the same enjoyment you had from the hobby and stuff like that. You're looking for
Yeah,
something else, right? And instead of going to
exactly.
the same advice that have been repeated for decades, right?
That's right. That's
Like
right.
I can say, like, try something different, try this thing instead, right?
I wonder if, and this just occurred to me now, Max. So I can't claim any genius on the topic, but there's been a lot of talk in D&D Tube about channels dying, and there's been some pretty high profile names that have said, you know what, I'm going to make different types of videos. My engagement's way down, and people aren't subscribing or watching anymore. And you can see that in the metrics. Like I watch some of these big channels now, their actual plays and their numbers aren't much different than when you and I post a game. Like it's not, in some cases there's a lot bigger, but most of those are older games. The newer games, there's just not as much traction. So I wonder if that happening in the background kind of made me think, maybe it's time for a different view of things. Maybe it's time to be a little more a compare and contrast. Like here's what they're doing, and here's why I don't think that works. And well, we'll see how it goes. I'm getting great feedback, and now I'm getting flooded with people saying, "Hey, can you take a look at this game, or can you take a look at that?" And even the brave people out there saying, "Hey, would you mind taking a look at my game?" And I'm like, "Well,
Yeah,
it's
that's
supposed to
great.
be
That's great.
unsolicited advice, but I guess I could start a solicited advice."
I love
So
seeing that attitude, right?
I
That's
love
because
that.
people like to
Yeah,
improve.
that to me is indicative of someone who's really into the hobby. Like they really want to improve. And you know what? Not everything I'm going to say is going to resonate with people out there, and that's fine. But if there's a couple things I can share that'll help their games and their enjoyment of the hobby, then I think it's worth wading through watching some games that really aren't what I would consider to be good quality.
What you're pointing out about the channel dying and stuff like that, I think like that might also be linked to the boost that happened during the COVID, right? When
Yeah,
nobody
yeah,
could do anything, so like they start like playing D&D online, stuff like that, and they look for
totally.
content. They try to like they had some fun. They want to have more. They look to those advice that don't work, and at some point, right, they can play those kind of game only for so long before like okay,
Yeah,
I want to do something else, right?
yeah.
If you don't get like most of the hobby right by doing those things, like it's like so you might as well like doing that or playing bowling, right? It's like there's not much difference.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
it might be that as well. But one thing, like I was thinking about like what you're doing with the unsolicited advice, because one thing that when I watch those things that drive me mad, drive me crazy, is that nothing happened.
Yeah, that's a common thing that comes up where things just aren't happening, or they're happening at such a pace that it's just. And I can see the frustration from the both sides as I watch these things with a critical eye. I can see game masters or dungeon masters getting really frustrated that nothing is happening, and so they start forcing it. I can also see where players just check out, like they're no longer. It's just too slow. It rarely is this way, but because most of the time the games I've seen so far, the pacing is slow. The default seems to be snail pace, and not like you were saying, Max. Just not a lot going on, and everything is very laborious and tedious to resolve. And it does come back to this concept of pacing and how do you speed up things. There's one I'm working on now, another unsolicited advice. And when I say working on it, I'm just watching the session again and again to see what I would suggest to this big YouTuber. And he's trying something where he'll say, he'll give an audio cue. He'll say things like, what are you doing right now? Like, or this is time sensitive, so I need to know right now. But then the response from the players is the same speed as it's always been. So I can tell he's aware of pacing. He's thinking of pacing, but because of the habits of play in the game, it's very difficult to have anything other than the default speed. So there isn't a change of pacing at all. It just stays at the same pace. Even when he's trying to push, and I can see he's trying to, it's actually, from my perspective, not a bad session at all. It's just he's struggling to get people to to engage with the right tone of the moment. You know what I mean? Like we have games where something crazy starts happening, and then turns speed up. They don't slow down. But often, what I see is that when something timely happens in the game, and it's pressing, and someone's sounding the alarm, there's no change in the pacing of like there doesn't seem to be that suddenly everyone is quick, like we're doing this, we're running, we're running for our lives. But then players start asking all of the out of character questions. It goes back to the slow, and then that drags that whole tension of the time tension. It seems almost like the pacing, when we're talking about pacing, we're talking about just that extra element of the environment working against the player. How quick we have to be. Our hand is being forced, in other words. Yep. It's being forced by what's happening in the world. There's which leads to the next, like your original premise. Well, who sets it? And if it's being forced by the world, does that mean that it's the DM's responsibility? Is it the game master's responsibility to set pacing? And well, spoiler, I don't think it is. I don't think it's the game master that sets the pacing. Not ideally, I think it's better if the players set the pacing.
Mercurius. Yeah, my ear trumpet has been struck by lightning. Said pacing is synergy.
You should just call him hearing aid from now on.
Pacing is synergy between player and DM, and I think that's probably where it is at.
Yep.
But I'd prefer when the player sets it.
I do too, and I'll say why. The reason why I prefer it coming from the player is because if it were up to me, Max, the game would be too frenetic. It would be too frantic. It would be too quick, because I love action scenes. I'm kind of an action guy. I like things exploding and screaming, and people are dying all around, and my default speed is quick. But I'm playing with Phil and yourself, and you guys like to let things just progress at a reasonable pace. Like we need time around. And our first few games, when I was running a game, there was this after, like when we did the what we called tweaking, when we were tweaking the game afterwards. This was a feedback provided to me from my players, from you guys, saying we would have preferred to have more time to just talk around the fire here. And you were immediately moving to the next thing, and we don't need to do that all the time. So that's why it is. You're right. It is a dance. It's a back and forth between game master and player. But I think it's the players in the driver's seat, and then pushes as required. But how the players. Now that said, I've watched some games where the environment had changed such that the players should have responded to it in an appropriate way, but because they were not used to responding in character, they just default to the same, my turn is the same long length, and it's just so slow. So a player has a responsibility here, but I think that the overall, they set like a planning. Players decide when the planning's over. Like I don't get to decide when the planning is over.
I think it's interesting also that you mentioned like the length of turn, because I think like you can have a slow pace with fast turn.
That's ideal.
But you cannot have fast pace with slow turn.
You can't. It's the limiting factor, right? If your turn in your turn order, this is the other thing too. I would argue in favor of, call it initiative. I don't really care. I argue in favor of turns, because then it's just, you don't have to feel like I need all 20 minutes of my turn, because I don't know when it's going to be an hour before I get a chance to have a turn again, and that's a real issue.
Because like in the I think it was in the first game, like at some point, like I said, like when like you watch for like 45 minutes of the session, right? The video you did because of the comments, so that took longer, but
yes,
you watched 45 minutes or an hour of the session, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
And at the end, I was just like, okay, what, like 3 things happen.
That's right.
That 3 meaningful things.
3 meaningful things, and that's it. And
that's it.
It's and there's some valid criticism. I've received some what I consider to be valid criticism, saying, look, the ones that I've watched at so far, they were set up not all of them, I would say, but a couple of them were set up more as a performance. And I don't think a role playing game is good for entertainment. It's not. It's only entertainment for those involved. The participants are entertained. If someone else out there watches it and see, that's fine, it's great, but it shouldn't be directed at a spectator. It shouldn't be directed at an audience. So, with that in mind, a slow game, if that's what fits for that group in that time, is fine. Like hey, we have a session where there's just a lot of talking and but as long as it's not one player that's doing all the talking, I think that it's important to have those turns short. Keep them short, even when you're just talking around the fire. You and Phil do this a lot, so just talking back and forth. What should we do? That's all good. It's good.
Like if you like, I agree with you that RPG are not meant to be like spectator sport. But if you want to make, even if you want to make a performance, like having like turns that take forever and just like question like an out of character talk, that's not gonna help for sure either. So
No, it's not.
and
It's not.
in
And
terms
that's
of
one of my
pacing,
main things. Sorry, Matt, that's one of my main things. If you're asking a lot of out of character stuff, you are by necessity you're slowing the game down because you're taking a step out of the skin of that character. I'm going to use the skin metaphor a lot given the show name. And every time you do that, there's a cost involved. And everyone else has to pay that cost too. It's not just you. It's everyone else has to pay it. So better to stay in character.
and
It's way
like
faster.
that's something we see like when they like okay, like this one trick to speed up combat, I've been saying, like, when it's not your turn, shut up. When it's your turn, do something. It's like,
Exactly. There's something to be said about doing something. Yeah, like
yeah,
exactly.
like now you see like it's somebody's turn, and now they don't want to do something. They want to consider what all the option of what they could do,
Oh,
right? And then like they ask
yeah.
questions, specifications, stuff like
That
that. Like
yeah.
there's a combat going on. It's supposed to be chaotic. It's supposed to be frenetic. Like that's the time, like that's just supposed to be like
Exactly.
high speed. Then now like I fast spacing, right? Just like
Yeah.
things are supposed to happen, but you just like keep asking question and question and question, and that also like lead to player being disengaged because now like okay, I'll tell me when you're gonna do something while
Right.
you're like figuring out all the option possible, like except like maybe the backseat player, right, that want to give advice. Oh no,
Right.
you should do that, you should do that, right? Like the one that
Right.
get them fucked up,
Oh,
one
I
shut up
hate
before
that.
they
That
turn, right?
I see that a lot, Max.
Yeah.
The
But the
co-
other
I
player is able, right? Like, oh, okay, now you're gonna spend 45 minutes considering your option before you finally maybe do something, right?
yeah.
I'm gonna check out during that time.
Yeah, absolutely you are. You're going to be on your phone, you're going to be alt tabbed away, you're just even if you're just daydreaming. I
Yeah.
think it's checking out here's a maybe a bit of a controversial take, but I think it's checking out if all you're doing is thinking about your next turn.
Yeah.
You should be paying attention to what
To what I
everyone else is doing. So you're not, when it comes to your turn, you're like, oh, what is it you were doing? Where are you again? I mean, we advocate for theater of the mind style play, so
Oh
it's
yeah.
no battle maps, and I'm yet to. I may come across one, Max, but I've yet to see a battle map game that feels fast.
I don't think it's gonna happen. I
I
don't
don't think it's
think
going to happen. So then the question becomes, and this is what I was thinking about this as I was pondering the subject matter, and maybe the question to ask is in my game, is it even possible for me to have a fast pace? The way I'm running the game, can I have fast turns? Because I would argue that while the DM takes on huge burden of I'm responsible for setting the pace, if you're playing in such a way that there is no possibility of brief, quick, turns and action, then it doesn't really matter this one trick you're going to use, or we're going to set up a different initiative thing so you can just look at this board and see who's next. It doesn't help because your turn length doesn't change. It doesn't get faster for you ever.
No, and also like if you manage to get those make your turn happen fast, right? You don't want to leave people time to check out.
No.
You say what you say where you are, you say what you do. That takes like your turns, your round is supposed to last. Your turn is supposed to last 6 seconds.
It's supposed to be
You can do
6
your fucking
seconds.
turn in
Well,
6 seconds.
I watch. It seems like I watch a lot of
There you go.
combat.
That's the answer, right?
Um,
The science like to the spacing. If you're in combat, try to make it like in 6 seconds you can probably do your turn. At least
It-
see what you do. Maybe like rolling the dice will take a little longer and resolving
Sure.
like moving
Sure.
the number. But like you should have been said what you do,
Yeah.
where you are and what you do.
Say
That's
where
right.
you are. Say what you're doing. And this is maybe something that I see this a lot, Max, and we've experienced this too in our own gaming histories. When your turn involves repeating systems that are in the game, like so if you have to list off as a checklist, I'm doing this, then I'm doing this as this action, I'm doing this as this action, if I'm doing this as this action, I'm going to cast this, I'm doing this feat, I'm using this combat maneuver, I'm doing whatever it is. Like if you're doing all of these things and you
I'm
have
gonna
to
place a
list them
fireball
out.
to include those
Yeah, and
guys,
then-
but avoid those one.
100%. I want to measure out here and what's the diameter of this and let's read it up. Okay. Speaking about the rules of the game slows the game down. And if just as I said, really that one trick to speed up, I guess here's my one trick, stay in character, don't repeat the rules. But this is not me saying don't play by the rules. Please understand, we're not advocates for, hey, just do whatever and no one has to know how the game works. No, we are advocates for high trust games where I trust that Max knows the rules that we're playing by. He trusts that I know. And without having to say what the rule is, you just say what you're doing. I already know you're using because I know the rules and you know the rules. I already know what this is. When I call for a roll, I don't have to explain what the roll is. If I'm going to modify a difficulty class, I just say what the difficulty is. It's just quick. But what I see more often than not is it's reading lines of prepared text either from the character sheet if we're lucky, because then at least you're not looking it up, or in more cases than not, you're looking it up on the internet, on the whatever, or you're reading from the manual. And I would say that you're never going to have fast pacing if that's how the turns progress. If you have to say, you know what I'm getting at here, Max?
Yeah, I've enough rule mastery that the rules can be transparent at the table, right?
Yeah, they could just be in the
That's-
background. That's fine. Where they belong.
Yeah. In terms of pacing in our group, I think I'm probably the one that enjoyed the slower pacing.
Yes.
All right. And I'm wondering, I was wondering if, do you think this might be cultural? Like me being French, or like a French speaker and stuff like that. Like we watch our Quebec movie or French movie, much
there's-
slower pacing than American one.
100%. Yeah, 100%. There is a cultural aspect there too. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I think that earlier comment by Hearing Aid, his comment that it's a bit of a synergy or it's a dialogue between player and game master. I think that's true, but I would say with the players getting a bit of a veto on it until such time as the environment demands a change, and that's where the game master can throw in this push or a complication or a conflict that really does have to. It necessitates a change of pace. So I think that a change of pace should happen, but it should really be the players should be in the driver's seat for most of it. Otherwise, you're just along for the ride. And buckle up. Here's where the roller coaster starts, and I'm going to run the roller coaster through, and we'll go through it, and then the ride will stop, and we'll get new people on, and then I'm going to run the roller coaster through again, and you're not involved in setting the pace. Like, I think it's important that you have the chance as players to say, I'm just going back to the ship. I gotta process this. And then process it. Like, just, you guys did this really well. You in particular did this well when Phil's character died, is that there was this slower session that transpired afterwards. It made sense. Now, there was a bit of frantic things at the very end. That was me messing with him, but most of it was slow, and that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah, because I'm somebody that I'm into this hobby, one thing I'm looking for is this emotional connection, an emotional alignment with the character, right? And I like to like sometimes it takes time, right? I like to explore like the depth of a scene and stuff like that. And at some point, when the juice has been squeezed, you have to be able to move on, right? But if there's still some juice to squeeze from that scene, I want to get it, right?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
oftentimes it's the last job that are the best, right? So, and I
Good
rather
example
take
of that. Good. Sorry to interrupt. Just think back what Phil did. That game you ran, that first game that we did together, where you were running it, the Witch of Duncanvale,
yeah,
and it was at the end of the game, end of the day, so to speak, and you were ready to move us along to the next day, and then Phil wasn't done. He wasn't done with that day. So just like what you're saying, that he felt that his character had more to do in that moment. Turned out that was a pivotal thing that changed everything. And thankfully, you let it happen. You didn't say, "Well, no, actually, I already said you went to bed. No, now it's the morning." He's like,
yeah.
"You let
I was
it let
trying.
me have it."
I wanted to do the time skip, and that's what like we didn't like agree back then on the way to do it, right? So I was trying to go slow, right, and set the tone, and I was waiting. I was hoping to be interrupted or waiting to be interrupted, but like politeness prevailed.
Yeah, yeah,
They let me go too far, but yeah, but and oftentimes like to tell you the truth, sometimes like because I'm the one that like the slow pace, right? That's a part of the question I was asking. Do you always have to yield to the faster pace, right? How can we? Because like if I want to, like maybe I have something I want to do in that scene. There's something I want to get from that scene, and I want to get there. I want to take my time to get there because I want to be, I want to be in character. I want to role play. There's something I want to achieve, right, in that scene. And if I'm always like cut off, or like somebody like if some like the GM introduce a push, and then I didn't get to reach the point I wanted to reach, or another player decide to pick up the pace all of a sudden, right? Then I didn't get what I wanted to do. So that make me like it's almost put me in a rush that okay, I probably have only a few turns to achieve what I want to achieve. So I kind of like to push it, like accelerate it quite a bit, right? And sometimes like I feel like I'm getting robbed a bit, like in that sense, right? And
there's
like
yeah.
part of it is on me because like I do enjoy a much slower pace than most normal human being. But
It's a well, I think this is again, this is why we're so insistent on knowing the people at your game table, because if you have someone that like you say, like yourself, who wants a slow burn, you want a slow burn, that's the preferred. There's maybe a cultural component to that. Understood. I've seen French movies too. 100% true. That said, some of my favorite action movies are also French. So it's not that you can't go fast, but I think there's also the danger, and if you don't have any concept of self-reflection, so this is the kind of people that I prefer not to have in a game, where they don't have the capacity of looking at themselves and how they're fitting in. They can't read a room. They don't understand. They can't listen to others very well. So they can't respond in kind. Because I do think that there is a time, and I think you do this well, to your credit, where it does feel like I'm starting to be the slow one here.
yep.
And there's a bit of a give and take there, I think, with people that once you get to know, and especially when we've played in enough games as we've had over the last year, you start to understand the cues of that particular player. And
I think it's also like very dependent on the type of character you play, right? Like
Should be.
because like
your
Alan,
Baconator guy wasn't a slow burn. He was a
Bacon, the Max
Yeah.
Bacon wasn't Korvac wasn't a slow burn guy.
Korvac wasn't, and you
was
loved
the one
playing
pushing,
Korvac.
like, oh yeah, I love playing Korvac, but he was the one that was like impulsive and like, oh, okay, let's
Yeah.
fucking, like back that door now, right? Just like
Yeah,
enough talking, enough like let's get moving, right?
exactly.
But I often tend to be like a drawn to character that are a bit more like I don't know, maybe talkative or like or Alan Richard that I'm playing now in the Horizon campaign.
Yes.
He's not like he's kind of easy, like you got the trait like cool cat, right? He's an easygoing
Yep.
guy, so he's like you're just like what,
Yep.
whatever, just like
Yeah,
take
yeah.
your time. He's not in a hurry, he's not in a rush.
Yeah, he's not a conversationalist, but he's
No.
not rushed.
Yeah.
He takes his time.
And he like to fuck with people, all right. So it's sometimes just gonna stay there, like just like doing a little quirp, and
Which
he's a bit
made
of
me
a
think of
nerd.
something, Max. Just as you were saying that, a slow pacing doesn't mean slow dialogue.
No.
Because you can have a slower pacing. You're still role playing in that you're saying what you're doing. Like you do this well with Alan. He'll lean back. He'll take out a cigarette. He'll relax. He'll do that for a bit. He'll go work out. He'll do that, and the turns are still short, but there's not that there's just slow talking it's you're still anchored in the world, but you're doing I'm going to go have a shower. I'm going to do this. It just made me think of that you can have a character that's slow burn character without just being slow. Like I don't consider Alan, your character, slow. He does when he has to act, he acts quickly. He's capable.
Yeah. When it's an action scene, he can be quite the action guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my ear trumpet. Say super chat. Thank you, Mercurius, for $2 Australian. So when Mr. Max DMs, he languidly
Puffs on a
languidly
Gauloise.
puffs on a Gauloise. We don't have like it's very hard to find like some decent tobacco around here. So that's not an option. But also I'm not really smoking anymore.
There he is. Clean living. Clean living. That's what our Max is all about now. Well, more or less.
More or less. Still probably drink more than I should. Yeah. And like those slow pace, right? That's also the thing, right? There's a difference between having a scene that's not much action. It's more dialogue heavy and stuff like that. But it's still going somewhere. It's still dialogue that builds something, reveals something about character.
Yeah, that's a good point, Max. It shouldn't be pointless. Pointless talking is just playing patty cake. I don't like that. I don't think you guys do that at all. But I do see that a lot. Like, oh, we're going to do the role play thing, and now it's just, especially those games that I've watched that are more performance based. It's a lot of, here I'm going to show you how funny I am, and here I'm going to. But it's not dialogue that's purposeful. It's just performance. It's a stand up.
It's like fucking around with an NPC at the bar, at the tavern.
Yeah, and it's not.
We did that when it was on Ebeline, right, in Horizon.
Sure.
But there's a way to do it that, like, it's like they say, like, every word should tell.
Yes.
Like when you say something, you do something, you should tell something about the world, about the character, about what's happening, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what we try to do, right?
Of course.
If we just have like little chit chat, it's not going to be like just random jokes, and like it's going to be in character.
Yeah.
And we're trying to make it that it reveals something about the people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I want to address this comment. Actually, two comments. It's a bit off topic, but like
sure.
Because Adapt Dustin, I did receive your email. My mailbox is for this address is kind of like weird now. So I opened it on my phone. I couldn't open the link on my phone. So I don't know how you sent it. I'll try again, and I'll reply to you. I'll try again probably tomorrow or maybe Tuesday. I'm a bit busy in the start of the week, but I might have to reply to you to send the link in a different manner. Because like when I try to click on the link, YouTube give me a mistake and an error. So there's that.
An ultimate no prep challenge submission.
Yes,
that's cool.
I'd like to see it.
Yeah.
And Daryl, I'm sorry, like I've been like very busy lately. Have you looked at my game yet? I still have it open here, but I didn't have time to read anything. I've been trying to focusing on writing, and I also been very distracted last week with a cat that almost died.
Yeah.
But
how's he doing, by the way? The cat's doing better?
He was doing great on like I brought him back home on Wednesday, and I was shocked at what he was doing. On Thursday, it's like nothing happened. He's like a new cat, like brand new cat.
Really?
Yeah. And then Friday during the day, but Friday evening, then now there's a bit of a decline, and now like I'm not too sure, right? So
okay.
Yeah. I'll call tomorrow.
Hopefully you'll be okay.
Yeah, well, it's it's an old. It's not that old. It's 12-year-old, but you got like
Mm-hmm.
a cardiac condition, like so.
Right. Right.
It is what it is. Yeah. So pacing. So yeah. Uh, and that's the thing too. When at some point, like when a scene, when you did the little chit chat, you exchange stuff, and you exchange information, and sometimes you can also just be like building the relationship between two characters. Like Phil and I, that's
Yeah.
a lot of talking we do. That's what it is, right? We're just
Yeah.
like a bit teasing each other, talking and reminiscing on something, and then you learn something about the past. Oh, there you go, Doc Flamingo. Thank you.
It's generous. Thanks, Doc. That's
Yeah,
great.
thank you for the super chat and for the good word. Yeah, and that's why also there was no game on last Monday. I was like, I brought
Hey.
the emergency on Monday. I was convinced he's not coming back, right? So
It's no problem. Yeah, it is important to have time for those links to happen between player characters,
yeah,
especially if you insist, as we do, that when you're speaking as your character. Like this
yeah.
isn't.
And that's also how you get a character, right? Sometimes also like in those games you like one game I ask you like, okay, now we watched the game for an hour. Can you tell me any personality trait of those characters?
No,
And it's no. They're like,
no.
and all the characters feel like they've been sitting around, like, not the player. The player are sitting around the table, but the character feel like they're sitting around.
They're sitting around the table too. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's if you're feeling, I've had this happen. If you're feeling like all your characters are kind of the same or they feel same, the problem isn't your characters. The problem is you. You're not getting into that character. You're just playing as you. The color of your pog on the battle map has changed, or your miniature is slightly different, but it's not different in the sense that you're playing this the same way that you've played everything. And a lot of these games that I watch, I wonder if that's maybe a part of the issue, is that they're not in character enough to get into that skin, to tear off their own skin and replace it with that character, and see the fictional world through a different pair of eyes than their own. Which is really hard to do if you're constantly out of character. If you're coming out of character all the time, it's
Constantly looking at a
hard
battle
to
map,
do.
constantly looking at the rules, constantly
Yeah.
like asking about like the world, and like you're not gonna be. And if you
Yeah, that's for sure.
so that's gonna be hard to get in character. And if you don't have like those slow pace, and that's also the thing, like the secret I think with the spacing thing, right? I like the contrast.
Contrast is good. Yeah.
You don't like, I don't want my game to be, because also like you get tired at some point, and that's also can be
Oh, totally.
disengaging if it's always like breathless, right? Like action scene after action scene, and you always like have a push, and you always something, and you always an emergency, and I've never had time like to relax a bit and take a breather, right?
Well, process what happened. Like you almost died. Like there
Yeah.
should be a time to process that. And that shouldn't always be fast forward. Like that shouldn't always be the time skip. I see that too quite often. Most of these games that I've been watching are they're more 5e games, which is a bit of a struggle for me because I'm not really a 5e guy. I've played it. I own it, alas. But it's really it's not that the game. I have no hate for the game, but I noticed that when it comes to short rest, like they do the short rest thing, which you're all familiar with. All of us know the rules. It's just a time skip. It's always a time skip.
Just a time skip, and it's just, that's what they say. Oh, let's take a short rest.
Yeah, and it's like,
They
okay,
say like that. Is that what your character is saying, or is that you as a?
that's what
is
I
that
like. That again,
Like,
because
why can you say like a character? Hey guys, just like take a moment. Like we almost died. Like just need the moment to breathe a bit, right? Just
wouldn't it be awesome to see that more often? Like see a player be brave enough to role play that character as if they're scared now. They're like,
and then-
I almost died. We almost died. Like that was it. Like I was on the ledge. I could have died. Like
And then tell
you
me what
say
you're doing during that short rest.
yeah, like your hands shaking. My hands are shaking as I try to take a drink, pull from my flask of water or my water skin, and I'm just a little bit, and that's the turn, just quick, and then the next person says something,
Yeah,
the next person says something. You don't have to role play out real time 2 hours. I'm not saying that like a 2 hour rest you're role playing it, but to just automatically use that as a time skip, you're not having chance to process what happened.
I feel like their character just go like in T-pose, right, for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. It's like
There you go. We got a short rest. We're ready to go again, right? It's like no,
feels very video game.
and
Like, oh, I see the bed. I just click on the bed. Now I can select on the slider how long I'm going to sleep, and then I'm, you know,
and yeah, and exactly. In those time, in those slow-paced moments, those can be extremely character building
sure they can.
because this is when you can like reveal something about yourself. This is when
Yeah.
like those little time and the way you deal with stress, the way you deal with the adversity, frustrations, like all those things, right? It's like that's a lot of people you see like they have a character sheet, they don't have a character, right?
Right.
There's no meat on the bone, right? There's
There is, and like you're saying, it's in that downtime, that slower time, that character development happens. I mean, that's where you're like, I've got to change things up. Like I almost died, or this is.
it's
Do we
it's
have
in
to
the
rethink our plans, or like, can we talk about what we're doing here? Like you did this in the Castles and Crusades thing all the time, because
Yeah.
you're like, why are we still doing this? This is insanity. Like, and the rest of us are all glibly walking around. Yeah, no, we're gonna keep going the same way. And you're like, we can't go there. If we go there, we die. Like that's those kind of conversations. I more often than not, I think are skipped. Like we're just quickly get to the next time where we can say roll initiative. If you just stay in initiative the whole time, then you don't have to say that either. I think that's another thing that kind of gets lost.
Yep.
Just stay in turn order. Just keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, and when staying in turn order can solve a lot of things, like and pacing as well, uh, because you just like like you have to say something at some point, so you still have to exist, right? So then it's also like it give an opportunity also if you want to control the pacing as a player a bit more, and
Yeah.
your turn is gonna come. So you have to be proactive, like think about what the character is doing in the world, right? So you can even if you don't do something meaningful, because like okay, those guys are doing something, I want to let them cook on that, right? Just like
Yeah.
then I'm just gonna make like what we call an anchoring, right? A throwaway action, just like
Yep.
like
Just say
like
where you
when
are.
when I with Alan I do that like oftentimes just like I'm just gonna roll a cigarette, just like because like Brick was the dealing kind of guy, right? And was
Sure.
like dealing character, and like Alan is not interested in that. I don't need to get involved. Like I have a character, and my character got interest and go and stuff like that, and he can is the character that's check out of that scene
Yeah.
because I don't need to be involved in everything. I don't need to have my
Yeah, that's an excellent point. It's an excellent point. It's not really on topic, perhaps, but I think it's an excellent point. If you're sitting there and you just have no idea what to do next, maybe it's because your character doesn't know what to do next.
Yeah.
Why don't you just role play that? I get a little frustrated where I see games where there's this constant. I have to optimize the action economy every round, every turn. Maximize this. Oh, I don't want to waste this. What do you think I should do? And I much prefer it when it's more authentic. You don't have to optimize every turn if it's possible in your game, and this is a big if. If you've confirmed that the way you're playing can have a fast turn, as I said earlier, I'm not convinced that some styles of play can ever have a fast turn. But if you can confirm that, then it's okay. You're going to have another turn really quick. It's not going to be in a half hour before you go again. If your guy isn't sure what to do, or you're not sure and you're the guy, you're stepped into his skin, there's nothing wrong with having a suboptimal turn. It's okay. It's
I'm
believable,
gonna
actually.
say, yes, it's not only like there's nothing wrong. It's like it's desirable because
Yeah.
like that's how we live life, and it is on topic because that's also gonna help pacing a lot, especially if you're in a combat scene, right? Instead of asking like that's something I'm a big advocate for, right? Instead of asking like, oh, where's that guy again? How many is still standing, and asking question like that, which sometimes you can lose track of in theater of the
Sure you
mind
can.
when like stuff happens like that.
Yeah.
Use that as your character lost track of what's happening, and say
Right.
like, oh, I jump behind the rock, take cover, and I peek over and I count the number of people still up.
Yeah. Perfect.
There you go. You didn't. You said what your character is doing. You
Yep.
said where your character was. You jumped behind the rock,
Perfect.
right? So now, like
Perfect.
people like have information, and you didn't ask a question to the GM, but the GM should pick up on that and then give you the answer that you're looking for. But it
And
was
yeah,
done in character, and that was your turn, and that you didn't do the most damage you could have done in
yeah,
the
like,
gun, in
oh,
the
you
turn,
didn't
the chest
optimize
after a lot of turn.
DPS or whatever.
Almost a
Yeah.
wasted turn, but your character needed that to reassess the situation.
You know what?
So
And it applies to the game master too. You're right. Everything you said there applies to the game master. There will be times when you're role playing an enemy where the enemy isn't quite sure what to do next. It applies both ways, and so it's absolutely fine. And you shouldn't be looking to punish. Oh, they moved, bishop's pawn to whatever. I'm going to punish them for that. It was a suboptimal move. No, it's believable because it's not. It's not like this perfect. Everything has to be perfectly tactical all the time.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing. Yeah, I think your name is Mercurius, but you probably want to go by this other thing that's too long. I look wildly around, seeing where the goblins are coming from, is 1,000 times better than asking an out of character question to the game master, saying, "So where are the goblins coming from?" Now you're looking for the same information. It's just one of those is in character, and the other is going to slow things down. Oh, it slows it down.
Yeah, and if that's your turn, that's what you're doing, and that's your turn, that's fine.
Yep.
And if everybody take a turn like that, well, not like of that length, I mean, right? Like not necessarily like doing that thing, but if everybody takes a turn of that length, you're gonna have another turn pretty soon anyway.
Exactly.
And then you get to do something, right? Just like
Exactly.
you see those fight that lasts like 6 turn, but takes
Oh.
like an hour and a half to resolve because every turn is so long, right? Just like, what if you do 10 turn, but each one take
It takes a little less time. Exactly.
a little less time,
Exactly.
like like half a minute or something like that, right? Just like, why not? Then you get to do more thing, but every time you do something, it's snappy, it goes fast, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Then you're gonna have a much more a feeling of like, oh, okay, now it's frantic. Now it's frantic. Is that the word I'm
Frantic.
looking
Yeah.
for?
Yeah.
Now it's frantic.
And the other thing too, this is a table etiquette thing for pacing. The pacing is determined in world. It can be influenced in a negative fashion if you're talking and it's not your turn. Like I see this a lot. There's usually one or two people at the game during a game session that will try to provide helpful advice. I mean, they're trying to just be nice and maybe have you considered this and what about that? But that's all out of character. It's going to slow things down. Again, there's a cost to be paid, and it's always a trade-off. So you're gonna try to help optimize their turn, but by so doing, you're doubling, tripling, quadrupling the time that turn takes. It was, oh yeah, right. Sorry, thanks. I forgot about that. And then the next turn, what's going to happen? That player is going to look around the table to other players to give suggestions for their next turn, or like, oh yeah, then what about this?
Oh yeah.
I think cutting that table talk that's out of character, cutting that right out, letting the pacing be established in character in the fictional world within it, with the environmental pressures that are present in that world, the conflicts that's there. I don't think games are better for having no conflict. So this is where I maybe take a little different, like some French films. There's no conflict. There's nothing.
There can still be conflict without being a fight.
That's true. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a fight, but there should be conflict. Like it doesn't. It's not always life and death in the sense of violence, but there should be a conflict here. It's
If
of
you
some
want
sort.
drama, you have to have conflict.
Yeah, yeah.
Before the stream started, Arun was saying, I don't know if he's still listening, I hope he is. He said, I'm sure another factor of pacing is whether it's meant to be presented to an audience or not. And he was saying, like, if it's a home game, maybe you can have like a slower pace. And like that's often something like people say that, oh, those are guys that they're hanging out together. So yes, they want to make jokes and stuff like that. I would suggest, and tell me what you think about that. I assume you're going to agree with what I say. During the game, stay in character and make the game roll, like condense the game time, right?
Yep.
And then you're gonna be able to do the same amount of thing in the session in much shorter time, you're gonna be able to do more actually in less time, right?
Yes.
And then have some time to talk about it afterward. Like, oh, when you did that, and it's like this thing, right? Instead of making the joke now, right? Or if then you can like, make your joke afterward. Oh, when this happened, oh, it'd be funny this, right?
Hmm.
So then you can have your social time with your friend, but you also can have like game that run fast, that you're engaged in it, it feel high tension, there's a fast paced,
Hmm.
there's thing happening when there's like emotional tension, you can live it, right? And you can. So that would be my suggestion to that.
Yeah, I agree. I think just to add to that, when all of you are trying to be in character and you're trying to have all of the rules and everything in the background running behind the scenes but still there, it is more mentally taxing. It is harder to do to stay in character, which means that after about an hour and a half, 2 hours, you're spent. Like you're done. None of us in advocating for in character play are suggesting that you shouldn't hang out with your buddies. Like we hang out before the game for a little bit. We'll hang out for a long time sometimes afterwards talking about it, and then we'll end the stream and then we'll stay on and we'll talk about this and what do you think of that? I made a mistake here, and we'll talk about all of that. I don't want to remove that from my experience of the hobby. I just want, like you were saying, the game part, to be in character and the game. And then there's a lot more for us to talk about afterwards because a lot more transpired.
And we do that even on a stream, right? Like, oh yeah, oh man, when you do that was awesome. Oh man, I thought you would do that, and then like
Absolutely,
some
we
people
have those
would,
same
like,
conversations.
use the
Absolutely,
game to have this conversation right now, right? It's like, no, like let the game play, let the game like proceed, right? So you're not like taking yourself out of the moment, right? Like you can enjoy the moment in the game as your character, like, or enjoy, or be in the character, right?
be in the character. Yeah.
Whatever the character feels at the moment, right? And you're not constantly like pulling you back out, and that's gonna help pacing a lot. Because like this, it's
Absolutely.
kind of like two issue, right? It's like this when you have like a scene that's supposed to be fast paced, but you have a lot of like out of character talk, that ruin the pacing in a sense.
It can.
And
I think it does. I think it does almost always. Like this game I mentioned earlier, and hopefully we'll get it out this next week. There's a lot of things to like about the game. There really is. From an in character perspective, the game master's doing a lot of good things. The problem is the habits that have crept in, where it's every turn starts with an out of character. It always starts out of character, and these are players that I think that can do in character play. I've seen them do it in this session even, but because the habit is there to always pull out of character and on the beginning of your turn, it slows it down. It's way slower than it could have been.
yeah, yeah. And the other part of that is like also like sometimes you do want to afford, like, allow yourself to have those slower pace part, and don't just skip over them. Like don't like fast forward
Don't
them.
skip over. There's a great comment here by K Dolo that I think if we can is
What?
7. Yeah, that one there. Can you imagine?
You want to read it?
It's just fantastic. Every D&D player wants those organic Lord of the Rings moments. No one will allow for that moment during the long rest where Boromir confronts Frodo to take the ring while he's collecting firewood. I think that's just such an excellent comment in favor of a variety of pacing where you can have that role play that happens not just in fast. We're a little different because most people will say, well, this in the downtime, that's when we can role play. We'll go further than that, and we say, I want you role playing in the frantic combat too. Like I want the whole thing to be role play. But if you imagine every rest is just a time skip, you would never have that opportunity for that inter-party conflict to and then think of all that happens because of that, like that transpires because of that time.
And there's this scene, but there's also like there's not only that scene, like there's a lot of rests in the Lord of the Ring, and a lot of like things that are time skip. They're just walking around, or they're like now they're struggling at this place, and
There is, yeah, it's
resting
travel.
in the-
It's a lot of travel, but it's not. And there is some time skips, obviously, but
Yeah.
there's still enough time there to really develop as characters. So you get to know them a little more and on the little things. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to know as a player, that's the other part I want to say, that when the scene is played out, it's time to say, okay, let's go, let's do something. Let's leave this place. Let's when you're going in a circle, I think that's when you're going in circles. I think that's the big one, right? Just like like when there's no more character, like what had to be said has been said, right? Like we had this those character developing exchange,
Hmm.
and now we're just oh well, one another beer, yeah, one another beer, right? Like
Yeah.
then it become like empty kind of like chit chat, patty cake, right?
Yeah.
Then is the time that if you're a player, do something, do like move on, right?
Yeah.
It's just like
Think
or
movement. Always think movement. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
or
And yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
or like that's also a time if the player not doing anything and the GM realize that's what's happening now, but it's kind of like sometimes you kind of like to give them the benefits of the doubt. Then it's a good time to put a push, or if the players all pretty much said like, oh, I'm just sitting back in my seat and drinking my beer, right? That's like a continuing action that takes some time. I would say a long time, but if you see me drink beer, it's not true. But I'm indicating that I'm kind of done, and like if there's something else happening with other character, that's fine. You can keep on doing that, and you can skip me because you can come back to me on my turn. I'm just taking I'm just listening. I'm just like, and I'm peeling the label of my beer, right? I'm indicating I'm done. Those guys can keep on doing their thing, but when they're done as well, then could be a time for a time skip.
And those other guys they should be paying attention to what's happening, like imagining the scene. And I think that there is a responsibility on the player that wants a slower game to be willing to yield to those that want a faster game at some point in the session. Like you can't, it's not fair to, especially because we're trying to role play all this. If all the other players are role playing their characters that they are bored, they're done. Like I'm sleeping, and you're still there pontificating out the window and trying to. Then you're not reading the table well, and you're being selfish. And your turn is too long, and since you're the only one taking turns now, it's time to change your pacing a little bit. Because
it kind of go both way, right?
It goes both ways.
The one like you cannot yield always to the guy with the slowest pacing.
No,
you have to yield to get to this guy sometime.
Sometimes,
also, like if the guy like is a big mouth, you want to talk with him, like you want to try to make a deal and a bargain, and the other guy is always like, "Oh, punch the guy in the mouth," right? Then like, well, yeah, I don't have room to play my character then, right?
Yeah, you
like,
got to leave room. Absolutely, got to leave room and read the table, like read what's going on. I think it helps if everyone is having a pretty good handle on where everyone is in the world and what they're doing at that moment. Then it's easier to fall into this ignoring the pacing or the how are we going to call that, the preference, the speed preference of what's happening in any given moment in the game, if they're all disembodied heads. Because then it's like, well, where are you again? Oh, I'll just be next to you. Or is that where you really were? No, you were out in the woods gathering firewood. You come back with firewood. You're doing something with it. There's still motion. There's still things happening.
Yeah, you still have to exist in the world, right?
But if you're disembodied head, then it just can continue.
That's the point of like staying in turn, or like always having a turn, right? Just like, because then like even if you're not doing anything different or even much, right?
Yeah,
you're gonna get a turn. It's gonna re-anchor you in the world. Like you're gonna say like, okay, what you're doing now, right? Just like
this helps. I think anchoring helps this too, Max. In that, if you've had multiple turns and your turn is just talking back and forth, it's probably a good idea every so often, maybe every third turn at the very most, you should re-anchor where you are in the world. Just remind everyone that you exist in the world, that you're actually taking up space in it, and not.
Well, I think if you do that, if you take the habits of doing that, since you don't want to say like like, oh, I'm just sitting on the couch, right? I'm talking to the guy. At some point when you say that once or twice, like maybe you're gonna make a variation, right? Oh, now I'm
Yeah.
thinking about my elbow, right? Something like that. At some point you're gonna stand up. You're gonna keep the game like
There's
more
things
interesting. There's
that's
more
it's more
motion.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's good. The other reason why I say this is because if you can imagine yourself physically in that world as in that character skin, then you're more inclined to see, well, like how long would I want to be here? Like how
Yep.
long am I? I'm not going to just sit here while this is going on. So I'm going to do something. Like what would I be doing? And
It's also like if you're not the guy doing the chit chat, right? You're not the guy doing the negotiation, right? But you still have a turn. You're still doing something.
yeah, don't skip that
And
guy. Yeah,
yeah, don't skip that guy because he still has to do something, and
that's right.
that might be the one also that pushed the pacing forward because like, well, now like, oh, it's my turn. Well, I'm just standing back, looking at the conversation, right? No, like you probably do something like, oh, you're like cleaning your fingernail with a knife,
Exactly.
and at some point, like having this habit of like doing the anchoring, maybe at some point, like if the conversation went too long, and your character is just there like bored, that's the opening for you as well to do something to
Yeah.
shift the pacing.
And I think it's okay. I'd like to hear what you think of it. I think it's okay in character, as your character, to be like, guys, we got to get going. Or, you know what, let's slow down and just think about this before we go rushing off into danger again.
Yeah.
Like you can ask for in character for a pacing change, or if it's in character, of course it's more believable. It understands. Sure, okay, of course we would. Yeah, let's not hit the bank tonight. Like maybe we should take some more time and talk it over.
Chief of Sinner asked, we ever made a movie that had an entire hour of just the protagonist yapping in a room about some meaningless dribble just to kill time and force the character to seem relevant? Well, the French.
The French do. Yeah, it's true. They do. Oh boy.
Yeah.
It's an acquired
Speaking-
taste.
Yeah, you're gonna look some Godard movie, you're gonna see that.
Yep. Yeah, that's very
I love
true.
it. And Daryl at this comment, like downtime activity, like, and I think that's a good thing to think about as well, right? Like having like, kind of have that in your repertoire, right? So you can have like, anchoring something you can think like outside the game as well. Downtime activity, changing bandage, putting a new edge on a weapon, cleaning up the site when leaving, brushing, yeah, those kind of things, right? Or
Those are
picking up
good.
food,
I really like the chewed fingernails comment.
Yeah.
The you'll see in our games, if you watch our games, we try to do this. I played in one game where he was the captain of a ship, and he had this little children's
Oh, yeah.
squeeze toy,
Oh,
and
that's good.
in moments I would when I wanted to embody the character as pondering things, or he would take out the squeeze toy, right? So there's still something. It just helps your fellow players and the game master picture what's going on in their head, and it's a bit of a character development thing. This little
It is
squeeze toy thing.
It like it tells us something about the character because like it's not like a just piece of ice, right? Oh, there's some emotional connection going on. We don't exactly know what it is, but we know there's something more, right? And that's how when you meet people and you make a profile of them in your head.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what we do, right? You learn to know somebody. It's through those little things, right? And then at some point you get a pretty good idea, and then you can guess how somebody would react.
Of course.
The same
Yeah.
thing when you're making a character. Having those things helps a lot, right? Helps, like I was saying, helps the character. Yeah.
Well, this has been an interesting discussion, Max. I think this is we don't tend to disagree too much, but I think that there's some perhaps good takeaways out there when it comes to pacing. My main message out would be, if you're concerned your game is too slow, just see if you can even have a fast turn. Just determine whether or not it's possible. The way you're interacting in the game at your game table, can you have is it even possible to do it? First of all, if it's not possible, then maybe take a look at making some of the changes that we've suggested here. If it is possible, then what we're saying is you can have slower pacing and still have fast turns. Try to keep your turns fast, and then a change of pace is possible. It's not possible to change the pace of the game, really, the way it feels, if all your turns are slow.
Yeah, that'd be like a, because like there's kind of like two advice. Like there's advice for like conventional people, right? That do like, and they say like, okay, try to make your turn faster. And then like for us, I think like, or for everybody, like I think like the contrast in pacing is very important in the game. Don't skip over the slow pace,
Amen.
because there's a lot of juice to get there, right?
Yep.
And if you're the GM, you can let your player drive the pace at some point. You can push them sometime, right? It's kind of like what he's saying is it's synergy, right? It's like it can go from both way, but you also have to let the other kind of lead sometime, right? Kind of. And same thing with the fast player, the player that prefer the fast pace, or it's almost like a character thing, I would say, right? It's like
It is. It's character by character. Hopefully, if
Character
you're
by character.
if it's always you feeling the game is too slow, then maybe try to play a different character. Maybe you're the one. It's just a player thing, not a character thing.
if you're always the one like dragging the pacing down, yeah, come up with a character that is
It's fast.
impetuous. That is
Impetuous.
fast.
Yeah, exactly. Try playing a fast character is a change. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point to wrap it up, probably, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. That's
good
good. Is there
hour.
any other comments you wanted to touch on before we say goodnight to these men and women of
think
culture
there was a lot of
and
good comments.
intellect? Yeah, there was lots of comments. There were some good ones.
Yeah, but I think most of it like was
In the
pretty much,
moment.
there was
Yeah.
this one that was funny. Like, as a Frenchman, how do you decide whether to surrender or flee and give and come back?
Not our Max. Max is more cut from the cloth of the Franks, the Charlemagne, not the modern guys. He's more Charlemagne. He's a Norman. There you go.
Yeah,
So,
so we're not
think
the same kind of-
Saint Louis. Don't think.
And yeah, so thank you for people that joined us. Thank you for you, Crispy, first of all, right?
Oh, it was a
For joining
pleasure to be
this
here.
conversation.
Thanks for having me
And thank
on.
you for the people that watched live and interacted in chat, and the super chatter. That's always appreciated. Not needed, it's a small channel, and usually I can keep up with chat. And thank you for the people that are gonna watch on the replay as well. And tomorrow we're gonna have a game.
Yes.
Horizon.
Yeah, we're gonna see what happens next in that. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna try it.
So people that do you think maybe we're gonna have more attention now that you criticize other people's game? Maybe they're gonna say that,
yeah.
those guys do it.
You
That'd be
know,
fun.
yeah, and I'm certainly getting a lot more criticism now, which is to be expected. But oh, that's nice.
Thank you, Kedolo.
So but in our defense, it's not like we don't have games posted. We have a ton of games posted. So I can understand people are like, hey, you never actually show how you do it, but we've been showing how we've been trying to do it here for the better part of a year. I think it's okay to, yeah, maybe there'll be more people watching and nitpicking, and that's okay, whatever.
Yeah, and we're
It's
we're
fine.
some of the few that do actually both advise
And actually show our games.
and
yeah.
actually show our games, right? And we do also like those discussion where we sometimes like Terra of Your Skin has always been meant to like we're trying to figure stuff out, right?
Yeah.
It's like that's not a show where we're telling you what to do with stuff. Like it's a show where we
I probably did that tonight.
Try-
Sorry, guys. Yeah.
well there's always part of that, right? But because like especially now we agree on that topic, but like it's also like exchanging idea, exchanging note, and say like, oh, what can you
And
But-
we got to get back into doing tweaking our sessions, like going back in and tearing it apart, and saying, "Well, I made a mistake here. I wouldn't have done this." So that's always fun to do. I like doing that.
All right, I'm gonna end the stream now, and see you next time. I want to do also like there's some video reaction I want to do as well about like some advice. Like you'll do the reaction to the game, I'll do the reaction to the advice.
Deal. Got it. Absolutely.
Okay, guys. See you next time. Bye.
See ya.